Let me tell you about the bravest woman I ever met and how the system we fought for tried to destroy her for telling the truth. Name's Robert Washington, but everybody calls me Big Rob. I'm 62 years old, Vietnam veteran, and I spent 15 years getting jerked around by the VA before I met Dr. Patricia Williams. This story's gonna make you madder than a wet cat, but stick with me. The ending's worth it. See, I thought I knew what fighting for America looked like. 2 tours in Vietnam, 25th Infantry Division, Purple Heart recipient, but I learned the hard way that sometimes the real war starts when you come home. It was March 2024, Tuesday morning at the Atlanta VA Medical Center, and I was sitting in Dr. Williams's office for what I thought would be just another appointment. 47 appointments over 15 years, to be exact. 47 times some VA doctor looked at my file, nodded sympathetically, and found some reason why my PTSD wasn't quite bad enough for full benefits. You want to know what 15 years of insufficient evidence does to a man? Let me paint you a picture. My wife Denise left me in 2018, 23 years of marriage, down the drain. I can't watch you destroy yourself anymore, Robert, she said. Every month you go to that place, and every month you come back more bitter and broken. Get help or get out. Problem was, I'd been trying to get help for 15 years. The VA kept telling me I didn't qualify for the treatment I needed because my combat trauma wasn't service-connected enough. Imagine that. Getting shot in Cambodia apparently doesn't count if you can't prove it happened exactly the way they want it documented. After Denise left, my kids stopped calling. My son Marcus, Army veteran himself from Iraq, got tired of hearing me whine about ancient history. My daughter Keisha stopped bringing the grandkids around because Grandpa's always angry. Lost my house in Marietta, ended up in a 1-bedroom apartment in East Atlanta, living on my postal worker pension and food stamps. 62 years old, Purple Heart recipient, reduced to choosing between medication and groceries. That's what happens when the country you bled for decides your pain isn't worth paying for. But Dr. Patricia Williams, she was different from day one. First thing she said when she looked at my file, "Mr. Washington, this is medical malpractice. Your case should have been approved years ago." I nearly fell out of my chair. 15 years of being told I was exaggerating, malingering, seeking attention, and this woman, this brilliant black woman who'd served in Iraq, looked at the same evidence and saw the truth immediately. "Doc," I said, "I've been hearing insufficient evidence since Bush was in office. The first Bush." Dr. Williams pulled up something on her computer, and her face got darker with every click. "Mr. Washington, I've been reviewing cases here for 8 months. There's a pattern I can't ignore anymore." She showed me statistics that made my blood boil. 73% of her black veteran patients were getting denied for PTSD benefits, compared to 38% of white veterans with identical symptoms. Identical symptoms, mind you. "This isn't medicine," she said. "This is discrimination." That's when she told me about her meetings with Dr. Richard Blackwood, the medical center director. Slick bureaucrat who'd never spent a day in uniform but somehow knew better than combat veterans what trauma looked like. "I've been reporting this to my supervisors for 8 months, Dr. Williams said. "Every time I get the same response, 'These cases are complex, Dr. Williams. Don't look for patterns that aren't there.' But the patterns were there, clear as the scars on my leg from that shrapnel in Cambodia. I started helping Dr. Williams document everything. See, I may not have a medical degree, but I know how to gather intelligence. Spent months connecting with other black veterans who'd been denied benefits. Found dozens of guys with stories identical to mine. There was Jerome Butler, Marine from Desert Storm, denied for 20 years despite obvious PTSD from chemical weapons exposure. There was David Parker, Navy veteran from Iraq, denied benefits after 3 separate evaluations confirmed his diagnosis. And Tommy Davis, Army veteran from Afghanistan, who put a gun in his mouth last Christmas after his fourth benefits denial. Every single one of us had the same experience: years of delays, impossible documentation requirements, and evaluators who seemed to think we were lying about our service. But here's the thing that really got to me. I kept thinking about a guy named Tommy Peterson. White soldier from my unit in Vietnam, kid from Iowa who'd never seen a black person before basic training. We became tight over there, way that only happens in combat. One night near the Cambodian border, our patrol got hit by NVA regulars. Ambush, classic L-shaped formation, caught us in a kill zone. Tommy took shrapnel in his chest and legs, bleeding out fast. I carried that boy 2 miles through jungle, under fire, calling in medevac, keeping pressure on his wounds. Saved his life. Got my Purple Heart for the same engagement where he got wounded. After the war, Tommy went home to Iowa, filed his benefits claim, and got approved immediately. Full disability, VA home loan, the works. Last I heard, he'd bought a farm, raised a family, lived the American dream. Me? I came home to Georgia and spent the next 40 years fighting for crumbs. Sometimes late at night I'd wonder if Tommy ever thought about that night in Cambodia. If he ever wondered what happened to the black sergeant who carried him to safety. If he knew his brother-in-arms was getting turned away from the same system that embraced him without question. Probably not. People forget what they want to forget. But Dr. Williams didn't forget. She kept fighting, kept documenting, kept advocating for veterans like me who'd been written off by the system, and that's when they decided to destroy her. The retaliation started small. Budget cuts for her research. Office moved to the basement with no windows. Computer glitches that deleted her patient files. Administrative nitpicking about every decision she made. Then it got serious. Carol Henderson, the HR director, started building a case against Dr. Williams, recording her meetings without consent, encouraging staff complaints about her excessive advocacy, creating a paper trail that painted her as a troublemaker. The breaking point came when Dr. Williams filed a formal complaint with the VA Office of Inspector General. The next week, she was accused of violating patient confidentiality and exceeding her scope of practice. "Mr. Washington," she told me during what turned out to be our last appointment, "they're going to fire me. They can't dispute my findings, so they're going to destroy my career instead." I was furious. "Doc, there's got to be something we can do. This is America, not some banana republic." She gave me a look that cut straight through my soul. "Mr. Washington, they've been doing this to black people in America for 400 years. Why would the VA be any different? The administrative hearing was a joke. They wouldn't let me testify in her defense. Wouldn't let any of her patients speak. Just a kangaroo court designed to rubber stamp a predetermined outcome. Dr. Patricia Williams was fired for pattern of unprofessional conduct. 48 years old, brilliant physician, decorated veteran, mother of twin daughters, reduced to a security escort walking her out of the building like a criminal. That night, I sat in my apartment drinking cheap whiskey and thinking about giving up. 15 years of fighting, and the one person who'd believed in me was gone. What was the point? Then my grandson called. "Grandpa Rob, why don't you have a house like other grandpas? How do you explain to a 10-year-old that his grandfather fought for a country that doesn't think his service matters? That the Purple Heart on his dresser apparently doesn't count for much if it belongs to the wrong color veteran? It's complicated, son. But you're a hero, Grandpa. Mom showed me your medals. Heroes should have nice things. That kid broke my heart and rebuilt it in the same conversation." Next morning, I called Dr. Williams's attorney, David Kim. Young Korean-American lawyer who'd taken her case pro bono, mostly because he was furious about what happened to her. "Mr. Kim, I want to help, however I can. This woman saved my life just like I saved Tommy Peterson's in Vietnam. I ain't abandoning her now. Mr. Washington, I appreciate that, but unless you have access to internal VA documents, what if I told you I might know someone who does? See, here's the thing about being an old soldier. You learn to pay attention to details, and I'd been paying attention to Dr. Williams's computer whenever I was in her office, specifically to the IT support tickets that kept appearing on her screen. The tech guy who kept fixing her computer problems? White guy, about my age, Vietnam veteran cap. Name tag that said T. Peterson, IT support. Peterson. Same name as the soldier I'd carried out of Cambodia. Could be coincidence. Could be there's 10,000 Petersons who served in Vietnam. But something about the way he looked at me during those appointments, something about how he always seemed to take extra time with Dr. Williams's computer problems, made me think maybe, just maybe, fate had a sense of humor. I did some digging, found out Tommy Peterson, VAIT specialist, had started working at the Atlanta Medical Center 3 years ago, transferred from a VA hospital in Iowa after his wife died. No kids, lived alone, kept to himself. Same age as my Tommy Peterson, same home state. I started hanging around the medical center, watching. Old habits from reconnaissance training. After 2 weeks, I was sure. Same face, older and grayer, but the same kid I'd carried through the jungle 54 years ago. Question was, did he remember me? I found out the hard way when Dr. Williams's wrongful termination lawsuit hit its first major roadblock. Federal judge dismissed most of her claims, said she couldn't prove racial discrimination without internal VA documents showing bias. Dr. Williams lost her house that week, had to move in with her mother, daughters changing schools, husband Marcus picking up extra construction jobs just to pay for groceries. I was about to lose the only doctor who'd ever given a damn about my case, and I was madder than I'd been since Cambodia. That's when I decided to take a risk. Maybe the biggest risk I'd taken since carrying wounded soldiers through that jungle 54 years ago. I spent 3 days watching Tommy Peterson's routine, trying to work up the courage to approach him. What if he didn't remember me? What if he remembered me but didn't want to be reminded of Vietnam? What if I was wrong about who he was, and I embarrassed myself confronting some stranger? Worse yet, what if he did remember me, but seeing me reminded him of everything he'd gotten that I'd been denied? What if my presence made him feel guilty about his comfortable life while I'd been struggling? Maybe it was better to let sleeping dogs lie. Maybe some bridges are burned for good reason. But then I thought about Dr. Williams sleeping in her childhood bedroom because she'd fought for veterans like me. Thought about my grandson asking why I didn't have a house like other grandpas. Thought about all the black veterans still getting jerked around while their white brothers got taken care of. Some risks are worth taking. Found Tommy Peterson in the medical center parking lot after his shift, walking to his car like a man carrying the weight of the world. Tommy Peterson from Iowa? He stopped, turned around, looked at me like he'd seen a ghost. Jesus Christ, Robert Washington? Hello, Tommy. We stood there in that parking lot for what felt like an hour. 2 old men remembering a night in 1970 when everything changed. I never forgot, he said finally. I looked for you after the war, but the Army said your records were classified. Something about special operations. Wasn't nothing special about it. Just did what any soldier would do. Bullshit. His voice cracked. You saved my life, Rob. I went home, got my benefits, bought my farm, raised my family. Everything I had, I owed to you. And you think I got the same treatment? The look on his face told me he already knew the answer. Rob, I've been working IT here for 3 years. I've seen the patterns in the computer systems. I know what they've been doing to guys like you. Then you know what they did to Dr. Williams. That woman was the best thing that ever happened to this place. First doctor I've seen who actually fought for the veterans instead of the bureaucrats. Tommy looked around the empty parking lot, then leaned closer. Rob, what if I told you I might have access to some information that could help her case? I'd say you should be very careful about what you do with that information. And what if I told you that somebody, theoretically speaking, might have already been collecting evidence of the discrimination you've been facing? That's when I understood. Tommy Peterson hadn't just been fixing Dr. Williams's computer problems. He'd been documenting them. Every deleted file, every administrative roadblock, every piece of evidence that someone was sabotaging her work. Tommy, whatever you're thinking of doing, it could cost you everything. Rob, you already lost everything because of these bastards. It's time somebody evened the odds. 2 weeks later, WikiLeaks received an anonymous dump of 10,000 internal VA emails. The Washington Post ran the first story under the headline, "Betrayed, Internal Emails Reveal Systematic Racial Bias in VA Benefits." But the leaked emails were just the beginning. 3 days after the story broke, I got a call from someone I'd never heard of. "Mr. Washington, this is Captain Maria Santos, VA Internal Affairs Investigator. I've been following your case and Dr. Williams's situation. We need to talk." Captain Santos was a young Latino woman, Army veteran from Iraq, who'd been quietly investigating discrimination complaints within the VA system for 2 years. She'd been building a case, but needed witnesses willing to go on record. "Mr. Washington, I've been documenting the same patterns Dr. Williams discovered, but from the inside. I have access to databases showing approval rates by race across 47 medical centers. The discrimination isn't limited to Atlanta. It's systematic, nationwide." She provided internal data that corroborated everything Tommy had leaked. Not just email evidence, but statistical proof of bias in benefits decisions, hiring practices, and medical evaluations. "Why are you helping us?" I asked. "Because my father was denied benefits for 12 years before he died. Purple Heart recipient from Vietnam, just like you. I became a VA investigator to make sure it didn't happen to other families. Captain Santos became our inside source, providing legal documentation that David Kim could use in court. She also connected us with other VA employees who'd witnessed discrimination but were afraid to speak up. The emails were damning. James Sullivan, Regional Benefits Director, writing, "We need to be more aggressive about denying these urban veterans. They're bleeding the system dry." Dr. Blackwood responding, "Understood. Williams is stirring up the natives. Shut her down before this spreads." Carol Henderson, HR Director, coordinating with supervisors. "We need documentation that she's unprofessional. Doesn't matter if it's true. Just needs to be defensible in court." And the worst one, from a benefits examiner I'd dealt with personally. Washington case denied again. These Vietnam guys are all looking for handouts, probably making up half their stories anyway. The media explosion was immediate. CNN ran a week-long investigative series. MSNBC had Dr. Williams on every night. Fox News, surprisingly, was just as outraged. Turned out veteran discrimination crossed party lines. But here's what really mattered. David Kim refiled Dr. Williams's lawsuit with the leaked emails as evidence. Federal judge who'd dismissed her case before now granted an expedited hearing. And Congress, Senator Tammy Duckworth, called emergency hearings faster than you could say war hero. I got called to testify before the House Veterans Affairs Committee. 62 years old, never been to Washington except to visit the Vietnam Memorial, and suddenly I'm sitting at a witness table telling congressmen about 50 years of being treated like a second-class veteran. "Mr. Washington," said Representative Gonzalez, "you're telling this committee that you've been denied PTSD benefits for 15 years despite combat service and a Purple Heart?" "Yes, sir. Been told everything from insufficient evidence to pre-existing condition to malingering. Amazing how creative they get when they don't want to pay. And Dr. Williams was the first medical professional to properly evaluate your case. Sir, Dr. Williams spent 2 hours going through my military records, medical history, and symptoms. Every other doctor I saw spent maybe 20 minutes before deciding I was exaggerating. What happened after Dr. Williams filed her discrimination complaint? They fired her ass, sir. Excuse my language. The room erupted in laughter, but it wasn't funny to me. Sir, Dr. Williams lost her career, her house, and her savings fighting for veterans like me. Meanwhile, the people who've been discriminating against us for decades still have their jobs and their pensions. What would you like to see happen, Mr. Washington? I looked directly at the camera, thinking about my grandson's question, thinking about Tommy Davis, who didn't live to see this moment, thinking about Dr. Williams sleeping in her childhood bedroom because she'd sacrificed everything for veterans who couldn't fight for themselves. I want justice, sir. Real justice, not some slap-on-the-wrist sensitivity training. I want the people who've been denying benefits based on race to lose their jobs. I want Dr. Williams reinstated with full back pay, and I want every black veteran who's been discriminated against to get the benefits they've earned. And if that doesn't happen, then this country's promise to its veterans isn't worth the paper it's written on. That's when VA's legal counsel, some slick lawyer in a $1,000 suit, decided to take a shot at me. Mr. Washington, isn't it true that you've been arrested multiple times for disorderly conduct? I felt the whole room tense up. This was the play. Make the angry black veteran look unstable and unreliable. Sir, I was arrested twice for peaceful protests outside VA offices, once in 2015, once in 2019, both times for refusing to leave when they closed because I'd been waiting 8 hours for a 5-minute appointment. And isn't it true you've been diagnosed with anger management issues? Sir, I've been diagnosed with PTSD from combat service in Vietnam. The anger comes from being lied to by bureaucrats for 15 years while watching white veterans with identical service get approved immediately. The lawyer kept pushing. Mr. Washington, your own medical records show a pattern of aggressive behavior toward VA staff. Objection, Representative Gonzalez interrupted. Counselor, this veteran is here to testify about discrimination, not to be put on trial for having the audacity to demand the benefits he earned. Sustained, said the committee chair. Mr. Washington's character is not on trial here. The VA's practices are. But I wasn't done. Sir, since you brought up my medical records, let me ask you something. Have you ever watched your buddy die in a jungle while enemy fire ripped through the trees around you? Have you ever carried a wounded soldier 2 miles to safety while shrapnel tore up your own leg? Have you ever come home to a country that treated you like a second-class citizen after you bled for it? The room was dead silent. Because if you haven't, then maybe you should think twice before questioning the mental state of someone who has. My aggressive behavior is asking for the same benefits my white brothers in arms got without question. If that makes me angry, then I'll wear that anger like a badge of honor. The hearing room erupted in applause, and it didn't stop for 5 minutes. Within 48 hours, 5 VA administrators were suspended pending investigation. Dr. Blackwood resigned in disgrace. James Sullivan was transferred to a desk job in Alaska. Carol Henderson was fired outright and faced federal civil rights charges. But the real victory came 3 months later. Federal judge not only reinstated Dr. Williams with full back pay, but ordered her promoted to VA regional director with oversight of 12 medical centers across the Southeast. The VA settled the class action lawsuit for $500 million, covering 2,147 black veterans who'd been discriminated against, including me. After 15 years, I got my full PTSD benefits with $340,000 in back pay. Bought a house in Marietta, 2 blocks from where Denise and I used to live. Started getting proper treatment for the first time in my adult life. My son Marcus called me for the first time in 2 years. Dad, I saw you on TV. I'm proud of you for fighting back. My daughter Keisha brought the grandkids over for Sunday dinner. Grandpa Rob, you're famous. You were on the news. And my grandson? Now you have a house like other grandpas. Yeah, kid, now I do. But the moment that meant the most came 6 months after Dr. Williams started her new job. She called me into her office, the big corner office with windows and everything, and asked if I wanted to work for the VA. "Mr. Washington, I'm creating a new position. Veterans Community Liaison. Someone to help veterans navigate the benefits system, train our staff on veteran perspectives, and make sure we never repeat the mistakes of the past. Doc, I don't have any medical training. You have something more valuable: credibility. When you tell a veteran that the system can work for them, they'll believe it because you've been where they are." So at 63 years old, I became a VA employee. Same building where I'd been mistreated for 15 years, but now I had a badge and an office and the authority to make sure other veterans didn't go through what I went through. First day on the job, I walked into the lobby and saw a young black veteran sitting in the same chair I'd occupied for 15 years, looking defeated and hopeless. "Son, you here for benefits evaluation?" "Yes, sir. 4th time. They keep finding reasons to deny me." "What's your name?" "Marcus Johnson, sir. Army, 3 tours in Afghanistan." I sat down next to him. "Marcus, my name's Robert Washington. Let me tell you a story about a doctor named Patricia Williams and why your 4th time is going to be different from your first 3. 2 hours later, Marcus walked out of his appointment with approved benefits and a treatment plan. Dr. Williams had personally handled his case. That night I got a call from Tommy Peterson. "Rob, you busy? I wanted to buy you a beer." We met at a VFW post in Decatur, 2 old soldiers who'd traveled very different roads since Cambodia. "I never thanked you properly," Tommy said, "for saving my life and for giving me the chance to save yours." "You didn't owe me anything, brother." "Maybe not, but that night in the jungle, you didn't see a white soldier and a black soldier. You just saw a soldier who needed help. I wanted to return the favor." 54 years later? Better late than never. We drank beer and swapped stories until the bar closed. Talked about the war, about coming home, about the different Americas we'd inherited after serving the same flag. "Rob, you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd kept in touch after Vietnam? Every day for 40 years. I would have fought for you sooner. Would have used my privilege to help you get what you deserved. Tommy, you fought for me when it mattered most. That's all I can ask from a brother." 6 months later, I got another phone call that changed everything. Dr. Williams had been selected to receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom. "Mr. Washington, I can bring guests to the White House ceremony. Would you like to be one of them?" "Doc, you sure you want an old soldier like me at that fancy event?" "Robert, you're the reason I kept fighting when everything seemed hopeless. I wouldn't accept this honor without you there." So there I was, Sergeant Major Robert Washington from East Atlanta, sitting in the East Room of the White House watching Dr. Patricia Williams receive the highest civilian honor in America. When the President placed that medal around her neck and read the citation, "For courage in service of fellow veterans and unwavering commitment to justice and equality," I thought about my grandson's question. "Why don't you have a house like other grandpas?" "Because sometimes, kid, you have to fight harder and longer for the same things other people get handed. Because sometimes the system fails the people who served it most faithfully. But because people like Dr. Williams refuse to accept injustice, because people like Tommy Peterson remember their debts, because people like you ask hard questions and demand better answers, the system can change. It doesn't change fast. It doesn't change easy. But it can change." After the ceremony, Dr. Williams pulled me aside. "Robert, I'm establishing a scholarship fund for minority veterans entering medicine. I want to name it after you." "Doc, that's too much." "No, it's not enough. The Robert Washington Courage in Service Scholarship will help young veterans become the doctors and advocates we needed 50 years ago." "Why name it after me?" "Because you never gave up. 15 years of rejection and you kept fighting, lost your marriage, your house, your family's respect, and you still kept showing up. That's not just courage, Robert. That's heroism." 2 years later, I spoke at the first scholarship ceremony. 24 recipients, all minority veterans pursuing medical careers, including a young black woman named Keisha Martinez, daughter of a Marine veteran who'd been denied benefits for 8 years before Dr. Williams's reforms kicked in. "Mr. Washington," she said after the ceremony, "my dad says you're the reason he finally got help for his PTSD. Thank you for fighting for people like us." People like us. That phrase stayed with me. See, when I was young, I thought fighting for America meant carrying a rifle in the jungle. When I got older, I thought it meant accepting whatever scraps the system threw my way. But Dr. Williams taught me something different. Fighting for America means refusing to accept that any veteran should be treated as less than equal. It means standing up when the system fails its most vulnerable. It means remembering that the promise we made to defend the Constitution includes defending it from the people who would use it to exclude and discriminate. That's a fight worth winning, no matter how long it takes. These days, I sleep better than I have in 40 years. Proper medication, regular therapy, a house with a mortgage I can afford, and the satisfaction of knowing I help other veterans every day. My grandson comes over every Sunday for dinner and homework help. Last week, he asked me about my medals again. "Grandpa Rob, which one are you most proud of?" I showed him the Purple Heart from Vietnam, the commendation letter from the VA regional director, and the photo from the White House ceremony. "This one," I said, pointing to a framed letter on my desk. "What's that?" "Letter from a veteran I helped last month. Says his benefits got approved on the first try because of the new system Dr. Williams put in place. Says he's going to name his son Robert in my honor." "That's better than a medal?" "Sometimes, son, the best medals are the ones that don't come with ribbons." 5 years after Dr. Williams got fired, the VA regional office runs like a completely different organization. Bias training is mandatory. Benefits approvals are tracked by race and investigated for disparities. Veterans have advocates at every step of the process. Most importantly, black veterans are getting approved for benefits at the same rate as everyone else. Last month, I got a call from Marcus Johnson, the young veteran I'd helped on my first day. He wanted to let me know he'd finished college using his GI Bill benefits, graduated summa cum laude, and gotten accepted to medical school. "Mr. Washington, I want to be a VA psychiatrist like Dr. Williams, help veterans who've been forgotten by the system." "That's good, son. We need more doctors who understand what it means to fight for the patient instead of the bureaucracy. Will you write me a recommendation letter?" "I'd be honored." That night, I sat down to write Marcus's letter, thinking about circles and second chances and the long arc of justice that sometimes bends slower than we'd like, but eventually points toward what's right. I thought about Tommy Peterson, who spent 50 years carrying guilt about his easy path while I struggled. I thought about Dr. Williams, who sacrificed everything to expose a truth that needed telling. I thought about my grandson, who'll grow up in a world where veteran benefits aren't distributed based on skin color. And I thought about the young veterans who'll walk into VA medical centers tomorrow, scared and hurting, and wondering if their service matters to the country they defended. Thanks to one brave woman and a few stubborn old soldiers who refused to accept injustice, those veterans will get a different answer than I got for 15 years. They'll get the truth. Your service matters, your sacrifice counts, and America keeps its promises to the people who keep America safe, even if it takes 54 years and a leaked email dump to make it happen. That's a story worth telling and a fight worth winning, every single time.